Hey, Cary. So I saw Beasts of No Nation last night, and I have to say it is a beautiful movie.
Thank
A
you.
stunning movie, in
Thank you.
fact. And it also looks like it was a bitch to make. And it strikes me that you put yourself in this situation a lot.
Maybe not always knowingly. I feel like it's almost like a self-defeating sort of personality type. I find locations that have really deep backgrounds, like where my AD's like, really, you want to shoot down that street, and we have to control that entire street and put extras back there, or prevent school children from running across in the background, or any sort of like sort of mind or hair pulling logistical challenges, you know.
But you have scale on this.
Yeah,
You have
yeah,
some pretty big, amazing shots with lots of real people
yeah,
in them.
yeah. I wish my first AD were here to answer some of these kind of questions, because he could he'd be the comic relief to me, acting like it was just fine. But no, it was
Where
we
exactly were you?
we were in Kofridia, which is about 2 hours north of Accra in Ghana, and we built an army out of about 200 civilians who weren't soldiers or professional soldiers. They were kind of guys who had been the same kind of guys actually who had ended up fighting in any war in that same region, because they were looking for work, and they were free to be extras. And we used some military experts to come in, some who had fought in Liberia, some fought in Sierra Leone, and sort of teach them the ways that they learned to be soldiers during their wars.
You follow the point of view of the child very closely, and that seems to be the secret sauce that made this project that you've been trying to make for a long time come together, finding that story.
Yeah. Um, so I studied history and political science undergrad. Was pretty familiar with the conflict diamonds and other resources that were sort of being exploited from African or former colonial countries and being exploited by the West. Um, and I'd wanted to do a film about it probably since '99. So when I applied to go to film school at Tisch, I used child soldiers as a sort of treatment for my application. And then I went to Sierra Leone myself in 2003 to do research, and still really couldn't come up with a story. I think I had too much sort of the world and context in my mind, and wasn't really coming at it from a character place. And when I read Uzo's novel, which was, 100% from the perspective of this child experiencing this terrible trauma, it all came together right then. I realized this was the most truthful way in to what I was looking at from a much more intellectual perspective.
So was Commandant the same in the book?
In the book, he's more elusive as a character.
More distant?
He's distant. You don't really know his background or really how. I'm so sorry. This is on. This is never on. I don't know how this sound came on. He's in the book. He's a far more elusive character. He's not really. You don't know where he's from or what his motivations are. The battalion just sort of like meanders in the jungle, and there's not really any clear objective. And so I wanted to maintain that spirit in the movie, but also you need, in the format of a 2-hour film, at least some direction to head in, some goal, even if you never quite get there, that the audience and the characters think you're headed towards. And that's where I added in the Dada Goodblood character as a sort of like larger political head, figurehead, and then also just the man's desire to be a general, to be a big man in a world of small boys.
Although he seems very Kurtz-like, very rogue.
Yeah.
Very not necessarily. Even if he is a soldier, he seems to prefer being out there with the kids to being part of an organization.
Yeah. Well, I think there's I think this goes for a lot of the military commanders and that sort of paramilitary commanders, I should say, where there's the seduction of power in a vacuum. And I mean the vacuum in the sense where, lacking in other social structures, they create their own social structure. Humans, our psychology is like so dependent upon this oftentimes very fragile perception of civilization. and then when that's broken down, it's really interesting to see the demons that sort of show their faces.
I loved the way you established the happy family, recognizing that there was a fragile balance and
Yeah.
that they were being encroached upon and that they were in danger. But you established it so beautifully. And then you realize this orphan. Well, we don't know where his mother is.
Yeah.
Needs another replacement to live, to survive.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense. Now, speaking of Kurtz, though,
Yeah.
what about that? I also thought of Fagin,
Fagin from Moby Dick. No.
Oliver Twist.
Oliver Twist. Yes. Sorry. There is definitely a Dickensian nature, I think, to the story. Anytime I think you deal with a group of exploited children, and of course Dickens, was playing in an era, and even in English history, with the industrialization of like the cities, where suddenly you'd have this level of poverty like you've never seen before, amidst the wealth, and the desire to band together and protect each other. Yeah, I think Fagin and any sort of operator and exploiter of youth who sort of lives just off the normal sort of or the realms of normalcy, in regular society. Those are the kind of guys, those kind of personalities, those kind of charismatic individuals which sort of band all these outsiders together.
So tell me about Idris Elba being. Isn't his family from Ghana?
So his mother is from Ghana and his father was from Sierra Leone. And he'd been to Nigeria and obviously to South Africa for Mandela, but this film was the first film, the first project that brought him to Ghana. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And was it hard to get him?
I didn't think it was going to be possible.
He's pretty busy.
He's a pretty busy guy, and ever since The Wire, his career obviously has just exploded. And when I called him, to talk about the character, even then the comedic character was much less written. It was much more like the book, and it was focused mainly on Agu. And I knew that I would have to do a lot of work to the character to make it attractive to someone like Idris to play the role. And he read it and he enjoyed it, and I think he was also familiar with the novel. So when I kind of explained to him what I wanted to do with the character, his interest seemed piqued. But even then, you never know if someone's actually going to show up. Any actor can drop out 2 weeks before the project starts. So here we are, moving towards it. And I didn't really believe it was real until he was there on set, and he was, living it, living and embodying that character that had been in my mind for over 10 years.
So you must have had some pretty. All right. How did you do talk about the aesthetic of the reality of the jungle
Yeah.
versus the surreality of the jungle?
Uzo's novel spends a lot of time describing nature and animals, and has a lot more, for lack of a better word, like magical realism in it, in terms of allegories and folk tales of humans turning to animals and animals turning to humans, and animals killing each other and not knowing their brothers, and using that as a sort of a much more magical, childlike perspective of the very dark and terrible conditions that they're living in, and also the things that they're doing. And I think magical realism is pretty tough to accomplish in 2-hour feature filmmaking. So I kind of approached it in a much more naturalistic way, but every now and then there are just little touches of that magic.
You put red in there.
Yeah, so to try and...
Oh my God, there's this huge thing. I'm going to turn it off.